and start the recording.
Yep, we just did.
Great. So welcome. For those of you who can read the script there, this session is being recorded. So I just want to make sure that all of you that have joined in for the orientation, that you understand that this session is being recorded. Okay. So good afternoon and welcome. My name is Sylvia Smith, and I'm the Assistant Director with Neighborhood Equity and Stabilization Team, or NEST. We're thrilled to have you here with us today as we launch the 2022 Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, for programs and services for our Denver residents. The last time we released a NOFA was in 2019 for the 2020 program year. And it was kind of interesting as I reflect back to March 17th, 2020, when our Executive Director, Eric Haraga, instructed staff to leave the offices and not return until further notice. We here in DEDO, Denver Economic Development and Opportunity, would never and could never have imagined the impact that the COVID would have on us as a collective. Needless to say, we're very happy to see you here today and appreciate the work that you as nonprofits continue to deliver through a very unstable. Please mute yourselves, please. Those that are joining in, please do mute yourselves. Thank you. So needless to say, we're very happy to see you here today and appreciate the work that you as nonprofits continued to deliver through a very unstable, unpredictable, and scary time during our nation's history. We depend on your partnerships and collaboration to help us bring about the best services we can for individuals, neighborhoods, and businesses. So with that in mind, I'd like to go over a few ground rules that we ask for you to follow. Since this event, when we typically do our NOFA, it is held in person. So this is the very first time we're holding our NOFA through a virtual setting. I ask, and we ask for your patience as well if we have any technical glitches today, but we have Meredith Segura and Eric Valdez who support our DEDO team members here with us today to help guide us through. So for the ground rules, again, for notification, this actually is being recorded. So please note that. And we also ask that you continue to mute yourself throughout this presentation. And some of my ground rules will explain that here in a minute. So we'll be recording the session today and making it accessible. And so because we wanted to ensure that this be somewhat interactive, we have the ability to see you and you all can see us, but we're going to keep you muted during the presentation. We ask and must emphasize that all questions be placed into the chat feature. Again, we ask and must emphasize that all questions be placed into the chat feature. As we are required with this procurement, we also will be publishing an addendum after each presentation. So that's after today's session. I think we'll be posting it about 3 days later. And the 2 technical assistance Q&A sessions that are scheduled for October 8th and October 25th. Therefore, it is very important again for us to capture questions and responses as best we can, as those ultimately help you as well. The chat and recording will obviously make that easier for us as staff to be able to put those back on the funding page and in the addendum. So each addendum will be made available to you on the DEDO funding page. That funding page and landing site is in the NOFA guidance that all of you have probably seen at this point. If you are dialing into the Teams team, but I don't think that this is applicable, we just want to make sure though that you both mute your microphone because we'll get that feedback from your laptop. So it'll have to be your mic and your speakers. But I do believe that today no one was able to dial in. So once again, thank you for joining. And I'd like to introduce Seneca Holmes, the NEST director, who will ask first that the DEDO staff who are present come off mute very quickly and introduce themselves before he kicks off the presentation for 2022. So thank you again. Seneca?
Thank you, Sylvia. Much appreciated. Dito staff, do you want to say a quick hello and introduce yourselves?
Hello, I'm Roger Cobb, Community Development Representative. Welcome. It's good to see so many folks on this call, and hopefully we can get some money out into the community. So, yeah, good to see everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Tara Olden. I'm also with NEST. I'm a Community Finance Specialist. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon.
Hey everyone, Dan Fector, Senior Internal Auditor with Dito. Good to meet you, and good luck.
Hi everyone, Carla Castello Rivero with NAST as well, Director of Economic Mobility.
Lisa Valdez, Contract Administrator for Dito.
Rachel King, Director of Federal Compliance and Administration.
Hi everyone, Kelsey Murphy. I'm the Data Platform Manager with Dito.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mariana. I'm a Community Development Rep with NEST.
Susan, do you want to go?
Sure. Sorry, I'm Susan Lee. I work for the Dito agency in both marketing and legislative affairs. Welcome, everyone. This is a great day.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Valdez. I'm the Executive Office Staff Assistant, and I'll be helping with the Q&A portion of this meeting.
Great. Did I get everybody?
Oh, hi, I'm Meredith Sakara, and I am the Executive Assistant to Seneca and for everyone here at NEST, and I'll just be helping to run the presentation today.
Great. Thanks, Meredith. Well, I think if we got everybody, I'll go ahead and start. First of all, I just want to echo Sylvia's sentiments. Thanks for being here today. We really appreciate it. It has been a challenging couple of years, but we are really optimistic looking forward to 2022 and creating new partnerships and expanding existing partnerships with our local nonprofits and community providers. So, as you are likely aware, the NOFA is NEST's largest annual single funding opportunity, and one that actually comes with a great deal of anticipation, both in our office and in the community. So I'd like to start by reading NEST's vision and mission statements. The vision, NEST envisions vibrant, innovative, and interconnected communities with the means and opportunities to make a home, get a job, and build a future. And the mission is to support neighborhoods experiencing significant change, to elevate their voice in determining the future of their community by empowering under-resourced and marginalized residents and businesses. So it's been mentioned already a couple times, but it is helpful to know who is participating in this meeting. So please put your name and organization in the chat. You can go to the next slide, please. So there are a couple points I would like to stress for the 2022 NOFA. First, we evaluate and score applications on their ability to meet a quantifiable, measurable community need. So the question you want to ask yourself is, what does our data show, and how is the data going to drive the proposal? Second, we will favorably score proposals that include multiple partnerships and comprehensive services to the community. So partnerships that grow organizational capacity, say for instance, partnerships that resemble a mentor-protege type relationship, will receive additional consideration. So motivating the creation of these partnerships is one reason why we are asking for a $150,000 minimum request. So please keep in mind that all partnerships will still need to identify the lead applicant and fiscal agent for the contract. Finally, we are looking for proposals where there is demonstrated community input, both with regards to decisions guiding your proposal and to the extent possible where we have actual community ownership of the program. So to put it another way is, to what extent is the community involved in your program's design and execution? Another thing to keep in mind, applications that could potentially be funded by another city agency may not score as highly as something that can only be funded through this NOFA. So one example would be workforce development activities, which is actually an eligible section within our NOFA to respond to. A proposal that is innovative, unique, or a pilot program may score higher than an established traditional delivery model that is funded by workforce development or their partner organizations. And I know Dan is going to go into that third pillar regarding the budget and budget docs. And so we can wait until further along in the presentation for those pieces. Next slide, please. So finally, this slide contains a list of priority neighborhoods as defined by NEST. So we certainly understand that this list is not exhaustive, and we will be reviewing our geographic priorities in the coming year. So, but for the time being, for this year's NOFA proposals, it is our expectation that your organization is either located and or servicing the areas that are illustrated in this slide. So we look forward to proposals. Thanks again for joining us. And with that, I will turn it back over to Sylvia.
Great. Thank you, Seneca. And for those of you who are not familiar, I've kind of gone through the chat, but not quite sure how many folks are returning and those that will be new to us in applying for a community development block grant. So just a brief little history. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG as it's known for in our world here, is authorized under the Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. Its primary objective is the development of viable urban communities. These viable communities are achieved by providing the following principally to persons of low and moderate income. That is decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanded opportunities, economic opportunities. In essence, they provide communities with resources, or CDBG provides communities with resources to address a wide range of public service activities. Next slide. Funded activities under this NOFA, we're speaking specifically to public service, must meet at least one of the HUD National Objectives. Those national objectives are listed as follows: either benefit to low and moderate income persons, they must aid in the prevention of elimination of slums or blight. And I do apologize, I feel that word is somewhat antiquated in the word slums, but that is what comes out of the HUD definition. And must meet a need having a particular urgency, or what we deem urgent need. Oops, I just fast forwarded, sorry about that. The, let me go to my notes here. The definitions for the low mod under benefit to low and moderate income persons are categorized under the LMC, which is a low mod clientele, or an area benefit. That information and those definitions are spoken to more in-depthly in the guidance that you all have been, that you've all received or should be familiar with at this point. So make sure that you review that information in the guidelines of the application. Next slide, please. This year's 2022 CDBG funding priorities, the major categories will be nonprofit technical assistance, job training and skill development, small business, and community-based focus. Again, this is what we will be looking to you to propose to us in these categories. Some of the focus areas in here are aligned, as you see on the chart. For nonprofit technical assistance, it could be capacity building for smaller nonprofits, financial management for a smaller nonprofit. For the job training skill development, it could be economic mobility type programming, including jobs, or innovative programming for youth. Small businesses and incubator modeling, capital access, COVID recovery, or business shift modeling. And for the community-based focus, childcare support, always a big need that we're looking for. Physical and mental health wellness definitely has has had more of a highlight and focus on it since COVID. Youth-based activities, community leadership development, or healthy food access. It's important for you to recognize that these categories or these focus areas were based on the data that we have collected. And so the priorities of how we determined this came through the HUD Pulse survey that we administered in March of this year, the neighborhood area plans that we have access to, the Denver Comprehensive Plan of 2040, the city's 2019 to 2023 HUD Consolidated Plan, etc. So these, again, are focus areas that we would be looking for your applications to be speaking to. I would like to introduce now Rachel King, because the nonprofit technical assistance is a very important category, and there's a lot of specificity around that as it relates to HUD. I'd like to introduce Rachel King, who is the Director of Administration and Federal Compliance, to speak to that category specifically. So Rachel.
Thank you, Sylvia. What we wanted to highlight for this category of nonprofit technical assistance is really that at the end of the day, as Sylvia just reviewed on the previous slide, we would still be looking for programmatic outcomes from these services. So I can try to give an example, and then if there's questions remaining, we can address those at the end of the presentation. But an example would be if we're providing funding to build capacity for a smaller nonprofit, ideally we would want to see outcomes associated with that service. So if we are helping a nonprofit expand a service area, for example, if they are providing new services to the community as a result of that capacity building, then that service, that ultimate service being provided is what we would collect data on regarding outcomes for the program. So I know that's a little complex, but let's say we're helping nonprofit, ABC in a neighborhood provide employment training services, and that nonprofit has never provided those employment training services. We're providing those capacity building technical assistance services to that nonprofit in order to provide them. We can then take the outcomes from that employment training activity and report those back to HUD as the outcomes for the activity. So I know that's a little bit complicated, so let us know if you have any questions on that, but ultimately it's just important for folks to know that we still do need programmatic outcomes from those types of investments of dollars. And Sylvia, I'll toss it back to you.
Great, thank you, Rachel. One of the things that I want to also mention that, and Seneca asked me to reiterate this, or at least mention, excuse me, that under the small business category, this is what we're looking for, as you see on the slide before you, but there could potentially be other future opportunities as well for business technical assistance under the American Rescue Plan Act, or what folks out there, I'm sure you all are hearing, is the ARPA. So we don't have any direct details on that right now, but just be aware and make sure that you stay connected with us here at Nest and DITO as those ARPA funds become available. But it's very possible that there could be more additional opportunities under that small business. Please keep in mind that this focus category is by no means an exhaustive list, but it's a good indication of what we're going to be looking for as it relates to the 2022 proposals. And the next slide, Meredith. Now I'd like to introduce Tara Olden, who is our community financial specialist, and she's going to go over the next few slides. So thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Hi, and thank you again, everyone, for attending today's informational meeting. Continuing on the topic of funding priorities, please note that proposed programs should not only focus on activities within the prioritized categories Sylvia just outlined in the previous slide, but that they should also incorporate the mayor's priorities and NEST strategic focus categories, of supporting programs that are community-driven, culturally responsive, and equitable. We'll also remind applicants that DIDO must ensure that all CDBG-funded programs meet HUD requirements, those being programs that benefit low and moderate income persons, services that meet at least one of the 3 national objectives, and activities that are allowable. Next slide. In 2022, again, we are only requesting applications that fall under Neighborhood Public Services. Other CDBG supported programs such as public facilities and infrastructure or the small business development funding offered are not included in this NOFA. For more information on those programs, please visit DIDO's Funding Opportunities website or feel free to contact the program managers directly. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan Vector.
Excellent. Thank you, Tara. So I just wanted to kind of go through everything. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. So as you're developing your proposals, we have 2 templates that you will be able to choose from. One of them is just a standard budget where you'll be able to identify the cost for personnel or non-personnel costs, or if you decide you're going to structure it under a fee-for-service contract, we have a template set up for you on those as well. So I'm going to kind of walk you through and demo our standard contract budget summary real quick, and I can then show you what the fee-for-service one looks like as well. So as you saw on the other slide, in an effort to streamline the process, there's not a separate budget narrative anymore. The form's been omitted from the application, and now it's all inclusive in one part of the entire budget itself, which you'll see here shortly. So before I start, just as an FYI for you, there is a general instructions page here that walks you through line by line of every single thing that you'll need to fill out on here. And then on the templates themselves, we've highlighted all the columns that you'll need to fill in just to make it a little bit easier to understand. All the other cells have been locked down just to make sure. There's a lot of formulas going back and forth in here. We just want to make sure it's as easy as possible for you. So just kind of walk through real quick. This is the standard budget summary. This is just kind of your main page that identifies all of the cost at a high level. These columns that you see right now, other federal funding, other non-federal funding, other city and county of Denver funding, these are all only need to be filled out by you if the program is going to have other funding sources. These columns aren't meant for if you have any other programs that you're running. Everything on here specifically will relate to this program itself that you're applying for. So on this one, you'll see we kind of have our standard categories already set up on here. So personnel, fringe, office expenses, etc. So I'll walk you through, but I want to show you just a little bit of the functionality of it as we're walking through. So you'll just fill this out. And then let's see here. Just want to. So you'll fill out these ones up here at the top, and then they'll flow right over here onto the other page as well. So there's not a whole bunch of repetitive items that you have to do. So on this personnel and fringe slide, you'll want to identify each employee individually if this is the route that you'll be going when setting up your budget. So number of employees, it does allow for you if you want to, if there's a couple of positions that maybe are to be determined, in the case of your proposal, you could set it up where there's 2, but then the annual salary would need to be a cumulative amount. So what I mean by that is assuming there's, it's 2 employees at $50,000 a piece, you would just want to make sure that it shows the equivalent like that. Okay. Same thing with the FTE. If each one's expected to be 75% of their time is going to be spent on this program, you just want to make sure to double it as well. So in the end, it's much easier, and it's definitely the preference of the city to just outline them per person. So after that, then we just need a brief summary of the job responsibilities in here. So this is the part that I was kind of touched on earlier, the fact that the budget narrative has been omitted, but at the same time, it is still fully involved in a part of our form. It's just consolidated into one form now. So from there, then you'll come down here. We do know there's a lot of different types of fringe benefits that can go into this, and it's not always a set rate. You know, there's definitely the FICA rate that's out there. However, items such as workers' compensation can have a lot of variables that go into it depending on the classification of the employee you are. So we do throw up here that it does say includes the following but not limited to, just kind of offer that flexibility, because we do understand that there are variables that go into certain different matters. So in here, you would just go in, throw in the rate. So for FICA, you know, 7.65%, and it automatically will throw it in. So all you have to do is put the number in there. FUTA, if you want to do that at 2%, you can do that as well. So just want to show you how this is flowing through. And then, so as you can see here, the one employee that we put here, obviously we'd need a name and title, comes to the $3,750, and then also the $3,600 on the fringe benefits. You don't have to worry about filling it back out on this budget summary tab. It's going to flow right back to there for you. And there's a lot of this that you'll see that's built in. It's just to make sure that there's no errors taking it from one side to the next. And then after that, then it gets into these other categories as well. So the office expenses, all of these. You would just come over here and pretty much the exact same thing. So if you wanted to do tools and office expense, you know, so let's just say for the sake of argument, you put tools in this office expenses. You got 5 hammers at $10. What we don't want to see is any inconsistencies between the line description and what we're actually showing in the program cost. So that's why we've set up the spreadsheet this way, so you can come in over here, put in your variables, and it'll automatically transfer it over into these line items. So that, and then another thing is that you can put in your indirect cost rate up here. So assuming you wanted to take the de minimis 10%, you would just throw that in and it would calculate right down here for you as well. And that takes into account all of the different categories, all of these from above that are able to be included in the indirect cost calculation. So each of these lines is pretty standard. One thing I will mention is that, so whenever we're looking at the indirect cost rate, please keep in mind that it is a requirement to use the modified total direct method, unless there's another approved methodology. So if there's something that falls outside of the modified total direct cost rate, which has been described right down here at the bottom as well, kind of lets you know what is traditionally excluded from that rate, then you would just include those down here. So that's the functionality of that one. I'm just going to show you really quick what the fee for service one is like, so you can see that they're pretty similar. Same thing. If you choose to structure it this way, we've got our general instructions on the first page. And then over on the second page, you'll have the same thing. You'll enter in your organization up here, the project, contract period, that will flow over. And then the same exact thing, fill out these if there's other funding sources that are going to be used for this exact project. If not, you can just leave them blank. And then over here, the projects 1 through 10, that's how you can just identify them over here. And there's a couple of different ways that you can fill that out. So whatever makes the most sense for you. But once again, just enter in the line description, enter your variables. So if you're doing trainings at $500 for 10 people, that would automatically calculate over the $5,000 right here. So that's the overall functionality of these. Eric, anybody, were there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, Dan, we only have 2 at the moment.
Okay.
Natalie was asking, what do you consider a small nonprofit? So that might not go to you, Dan, but anybody that can answer that.
When we say small, what do you mean by small? Where do you see that defined?
Natalie, you can go ahead and unmute if you want to clarify your question.
It says technical assistance for smaller nonprofits.
So I don't know if we've actually had it. Tara, do we actually have a smaller nonprofits defined?
So I think it's a term of art. I don't know that we actually have a definition. I have seen smaller nonprofits defined at under $500,000 annual budget. Some have it defined up at from like 100 to 2, or from 50 to 250. But if you believe that you're comfortably in that range, I think we could consider you a small nonprofit.
So it's based on budget, not necessarily staff capacity.
Yeah, we'll take all that into account.
Thank you, Seneca.
Okay, and Morgan is asking what age range qualifies as youth.
For youth, I believe that we've had, is it beyond 18 to 24, or is it 16 to 24? I think that's what we've had our contract set up as. I think it's been 16 to 24, but we would definitely verify that for you. So that will obviously go in the addendum as well. Unless Rachel or Mariana have, with their HUD background, have anything more to add to that.
No, that would really just be
just our own
kind of
determination.
A business, yeah. On your end. Yep.
Yeah, I think for us, if there's not an official definition, we have typically gone through, I think, 16 to 24, but again, we'll verify that in the addendum.
And that's all the questions up to this point.
So thank you, Dan, and we'll segue now to Mariana for the next slides. So she'll start with 12.
So I have the pleasure of talking to you about some of on the background, how we're considering your proposals. So proposed activities will be reviewed individually. We'll be looking for a match to our stated priorities. We're not expecting you to align with all of our priorities, but we do expect that there will be some alignment to as many priorities as possible. We're looking for you all to demonstrate a commitment to and ability to meet the stated program outcomes. For example, evaluators might review an organization's previous contracted work with the city or similar work, the organization's capacity, and their fiscal sustainability, as well as other funding sources that you might all have. The reviews will be conducted by NEST personnel, other city staff, community partners who have an expertise and or experience in the various program areas. We will be only reviewing submitted proposals. So if your proposal is left in draft status at 4:01 p.m. on the deadline of November 8th, it will not be reviewed or scored. And so please make sure that you are submitting that proposal on the deadline or before, preferably. Decisions are anticipated in late 2021, and all awards and funding commitments are made contingent on HUD funding awards to Denver. In addition to that submittal deadline, there will be, as Sylvia mentioned earlier, 3 addendums, so questions that are asked by you all that we will be providing answers to throughout this technical assistance and this webinar and the other ones that are upcoming. And those will be published for you all to review. So it is possible for you to wait for the 3rd addendum to be published before submitting your proposal. There is no effect on scoring. You don't get bonus points for submitting early. Next, thanks. So other considerations, again, past performance, if applicable, your ability to leverage our dollars with outside money, projects that need to be ready to begin and get off the ground. We don't have the capability to stand up a program. Proposals that have clearly identified and quantifiable outcomes, as well as, again, your organizational capacity. You know, what do you have accounting staff? Are you able to commit to the reporting and compliance requirements of these funds? And next slide. So potential ineligibility during the procurement process. And I will say that these can occur at any time during the procurement process if we learn of new information. So whether you just submitted your application, whether we're reviewing it, or whether we've reviewed it and scored it and suddenly we learn that something occurred. So this can occur at any process. I believe even after we've made decisions. So if something happens during the contracting process, something comes up that could potentially make you ineligible, that is something that we will take heavily into consideration at that point as well. So there is never really a time where if something happens that we won't put a pause on that contract if necessary. So any organization that has a defaulted loan with DITO, so our agency, any organization that has unpaid audit fees or performance audit penalties and fees, and any organization that is delinquent in taxes, and that's both sales or property taxes. And I will pass it on to Lisa.
Okay, and let me just interrupt. Thank you, Mariana. Before we move on to Lisa, I want to go to the chat. If Eric, you can read off a question, because I know Seneca is limited on his time today, but there's a question regarding the partnerships, and I want him to speak to his vision around the collaborative partnership. So I think I saw something come through on that.
Yeah. The question is, what kind of collaborations and our partnerships do you envision for this funding? Seneca, you're on mute.
Sorry. That's a great question. I think there's kind of 2 forms of collaborations that we would like to see. One would be a larger capacity nonprofit or community organization working with a smaller grassroots organization that would be able to provide some guidance and some ability to offer ways to grow their capacity. Of course, it could also be multiple smaller nonprofits that are looking to work together to provide a service and or services. So one of the things that we're trying to avoid is duplication of services. And so if there are similar organizations that can work together to comprehensively sort of address the needs of the community, that would be something that we would be looking for. But it could also take another direction. It could be that there are services that are needed by a particular population that is being served by a nonprofit, and you want to diversify sort of those services to provide more comprehensive support for a community. And that could be allowable as well. So really, we don't have a kind of prescriptive vision. We're really looking to our providers to see kind of what works best for them, understanding that that forging the partnership is really ultimately the most important thing at this point in time.
Thank you.
Okay, and Natalie had a couple more questions. Is there minimum number of people served?
I would say, Natalie, that in the past, from our past experiences of our public service contracts, there's not been a minimum number. I mean, it depends definitely on the program and services that are being proposed. We have seen them as small as, 25 all the way to 150 or higher. So it just is really going to depend on the program that is proposed.
Okay. She also asked, how do you recommend how mental health wellness is quantified?
Yeah, that one's a good one, and I don't have an answer for that one.
If I can step in,
Yes, please.
Sylvia. So I was reading this question, and Natalie, I think that is beyond the technical assistance question. I think in order for, that's not a question that we could answer. The agency would have to determine how you measure mental health and wellness impacts within a NEST community. So that really is more programmatic, and we'd like to see if you were to propose a program, how you would measure that.
Great. Thank you. See, that's why we need all these team members.
All right, there's another question. If you have already received DITO funding for employment and CSBG funding, would an application for a different program be competitive?
Would it be considered? Is that what you mean?
You can go ahead and clarify your question, Morgan.
And you can come off camera.
Would it be considered, or would it be considered to be competitive in terms of all the other applications that are being received?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead. I would see it as being, I don't see it as being competitive. I mean, if you are proposing a different service, right, and different programming, that would be something that we would be looking for.
Okay. That
You're
helps.
not looking, yeah, are you thinking that you would be like leveraging this money with that program?
No, more so just that receiving funding in the past does not exclude you from proposing a new program or application.
Oh, no. If you're saying from the past, no, not at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And that's it for now, Sylvia.
Great. Thank you. Lisa Valdez.
All right. Thank you. So I will be going through the next few slides talking about federal and contract requirements as it pertains to this program funding. Compliance and performance, as you know, is a large part of your contract, and you should be aware of that prior to submitting a proposal. So for environmental, this is a regulation which strictly forbids the commitment or expenditure of funds until an environmental clearance has been completed on our end. So until that takes place and it's been cleared, we're unable to proceed with the contracting portion. And then for relocation, proposals that entail home rehab or down payment assistance, you must summarize with a written policy and a procedure that addresses tenant-occupied homes, which are not eligible for down payment assistance, and any provisions for occupants that should be temporarily displaced from their residence for longer than a day. So we would be looking for that information from you during the contract development process. And then in addition to that, next slide, please. In addition to that, we have some additional compliance requirements, which is Davis-Bacon. And these are for proposals that would be requesting funds for demolition, rehab, or new construction. And so there would be some prevailing wages and other compliance requirements that are associated with that Davis-Bacon. And Section 3 also does impact proposals that are also over in excess of 100,000, and they also entail demolition, rehab, and new construction. So at the time of your contract development, you would be required to submit a Section 3 utilization plan, which would describe how you would be partnering with low to moderate income subs and how you would be soliciting those proposals from those subs. And then in addition to that, we have our uniform grant guidance, which provides for rescission of an award for non-compliance or non-performance. DITO will do a thorough risk assessment prior to awarding any contracts. So we would hope to see any of those non-compliance or non-performance issues prior to awarding. And then finally, contract requirements. You will be required as a primary applicant to provide a DUNS number as part of your online application in Zengen. And so that is a requirement, but we also want to make any primaries aware that if you do have any sub-partners, that DUNS requirement is also going to be effective for them as well. So you would want to make sure that if you do not already have a DUNS number or your subs don't have a DUNS number, that you begin that process as early as possible, because it can take up to 3 weeks for you to get that number. And that number is also applicable to your SAM registration, which you must verify that you are in good standing with the System for Award Management database. And so we would need verification of that prior to being able to move forward with any contracting requirements. And so those two really go hand in hand. In addition, you will need to create a Secretary of State certification and make sure that you are also in good standing with that. And that is part of your submission of application. You will be asked to upload that document into your application before submitting, along with your drug-free workplace, anti-lobbying, and debarment attestation. So those documents are required for you to submit your application, and you can find that in the required certification section of the application. In addition, insurance is a requirement of all city contracts. High level, we've identified workers' comp and employers' liabilities, commercial general liability, including cybersecurity, and business auto liability. You can find a detailed description of your insurance certificates in the sample agreement part 1, which you can locate on the DITO fund page as an attached document. So again, these are all required documents that you will be asked for at the time of application or throughout your contracting process if you are awarded. And I will turn it over to Roger for the next slide.
Roger, on mute.
Roger, you're on mute.
Thank you. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about the NOFA schedule of events. As you know, the portal was open September 22nd at 4 p.m. This is actually the general information meeting we're having now. And then there'll be 2 more sessions where those addendums will come from with the technical assistance on October 8th from 1 to 2, and then again on October 25th from 11 a.m. to noon. And one of the things that we're really stressing this year is that you complete your proposal submission deadline prior to November 8th at 4 p.m. Sometimes folks wait a little bit longer and they realize that, oh, I need this or I need that. And so another piece of this is that we're requesting that all questions be sent to the DITO website at DITO_neighborhoods.proposal@denvergov.org. In addition, The addendums will give you a little bit more guidance as they come out. We would like you to note, though, that we won't be presenting this general information from today, but it will be available, say, within the next 2-3 days as part of our question and answer session in October. And those sessions are really just for the technical assistance addressing the application, the platform with GenZen, and the links associated. And please know that once you have submitted your application, that you will receive an email when your proposal is accepted. If not, once again, please reach out to our DITO website. Next slide, please. And for questions, please know that we can't provide any guidance on your proposal. There was a question a little earlier about quantifying, and Tara hit the nail right on the head and saying that's kind of helping you develop your program. We can only provide that technical support, if you will, as it applies to the application and filling it out, if you will. Once again, all questions are asked to be submitted to our email address listed there below. But once again, the confirmation email will be sent once it's submitted. It's really important because someone spoke to it earlier that sometimes they get hung up in a draft form and they're never submitted, and someone says, "Oh, well, I submitted it. I'm sure that I did." Well, we've tightened it up a little bit to where once you receive that email confirmation, you'll know that you have submitted your contract. Let's see here, and we do this so that anyone that's applying for these monies, this particular grant, they may have the same questions. That's the purpose of the addendum, so that you can see what other folks have asked, and that may answer your question, which allows it to be accessible to all. And the other pieces that we spoke to just a little bit ago, that all questions may not be appropriate for us to ask, and that just goes back to building your program or advising your program. Once again, I just want to reiterate that the applications and the draft status has always been one of our biggest problems in the last few years, because once again, they're not always submitted. So please remember, after you start your submission, you should receive that email confirming your application has been received. Sylvia?
Okay, Eric, do you want to go back to some questions that you may be seeing in the chat?
Yeah. So we have a couple on there now. If we are not located in a Nest neighborhood but serve youth and families from Nest neighborhoods, are projects still eligible for funding? We are located in Lincoln Park.
Yes. But we will be asking you to be able to, I mean, the information, depending on when we negotiate that scope for those that are awarded, you know, we will be looking for services that you may be reaching to it within our Nest neighborhoods. So please do keep that in mind.
Okay. If we have other funding from the city and county of Denver and have provided insurance documentation, is it needed for us to submit them again to DITO?
Yes, you will need to submit your insurance documents. Each boilerplate agreement or contract has very specific requirements as it pertains to your scope of work, and so we would be requiring maybe different levels of coverage, things of that nature. So yes, you would need to submit a new insurance document or COI for our review as it pertains to your scope of services.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
If you wanted to go off of that question, that's fine. I was just going to ask the next one.
No, I'll leave my comments till afterwards. Thank you.
All right. If we are a national organization with one 501c3, but we'll be applying for our Denver Workforce Development Programming, are we still an eligible applicant?
Where's that question? If we are, sorry.
It's Andrea. If we are a national
organization with one 501c3, yes. Yes, Andrea.
Okay. Is there any harm benefit to applying for only salary support from Nest associated to our project? We would detail out other costs from, sorry, because they're coming in and not moved.
That's okay.
We would detail out the other costs from the other funders to cover the non-salary needs, but only asking Nest for salary support.
No. Rob, your question is, can it just be to fund salary?
Correct.
Is that? Yes, we've done that as well. That's something that I see that our contract administrator support, Victoria Lindsay, has now joined us, and so she can speak to some things that she may feel that have come up in these past NOFAs. So I'll give her an opportunity to speak as well, but I know that that is a question that comes up quite a bit during our past presentations, because that sometimes it's easier for us to fund that, you know, to be able to, when we have to get down to just the non-personnel costs. For those of you that have never applied for the CDBG funding, it can get a bit cumbersome because, again, you will be providing documentation for all expenses, and so at some point it can be very convoluted and complicated, and so that is something that we do somewhat encourage. It's definitely not definitive. So Rob, for that has not changed.
Okay. You stated a minimum fund, moved again. A minimum fund request of 150,000. Is there a maximum?
You're muted, Sylvia.
Sorry. No, we don't have a maximum. Or do you mean, Steve, can you explain what you mean by that? When you say a maximum?
I was just asking, is there some type of maximum amount you can give per one organization?
No.
Okay. Yep, that was it.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we eligible to apply if we are fiscally sponsored by CNDC?
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, and if we are currently under a contract through the DITO CDBG CV funding to ensure no overlap, can we create a request budget that doesn't start until after the other funding ends, June 30th, 2022?
Interesting question. Well, our program design is such that this is a program for January. Our starting time frame would be January 1, 2022 to December 31, 2022. Go back to that question. If we are currently under a contract through the DITO CDBG funding CV to ensure no overlap, can we create a request budget that doesn't start until after the other funding ends? I don't actually think I know the answer to that.
No.
No. Okay,
Hi,
go Victoria.
No, no, we can't. Our program, like you said, Sylvia, runs January to December. So they would need to provide those services during that contract period. That is the period for which they will be evaluated on. And so we're not looking to give a 6-month contract or a 3-month contract or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. And so this question probably was just answered by that, and it just said is a 1-year grant, correct? January to December. So that was answered. Will you consider multiple proposals, projects from the same organization?
Yes.
Okay. What's the total pool you have to distribute? Sorry if I missed that.
Our total budget, our CDBG funding.
Rob, if you want to clarify that question.
Yeah. What's the total funding that you're deploying to the community?
Well, we typically still run the same pot, about 1.3, I think it is, about.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the questions out as of right now.
Great. Victoria, I'd like for you to chime in if there was anything that during the presentation, because I know that for the CA piece, the experiences that you've, I think specifically that insurance requirements and the dilemmas you have experienced as both the contract administrator and then being the liaison to our contractors. The challenges that are brought
hi
on
everybody.
With the insurance.
I had intended to just be a voyeur in this since my activity got rescheduled actually. However, Speaking to the first, let me just respond to your question, Sylvia, or clarification about the budget and the salaries. You were spot on that. Yeah, we encourage personnel costs as much as you can. Charge the personnel costs for your project to this grant. It just becomes very complicated for many of our vendors when you're charging us for paper and copier rental and pencils, and it gets very convoluted and takes a very long time to assess and break out to determine, well, are there 400 pencils they're buying just for our project, or are they using it for another project, and how do we reconcile that? And then we have to track those things, and personnel costs are pretty cut and dry, and rarely have situations where there's big questions, because you do submit the payroll registry information. And so we prefer that. And if you have another source of funds for those non-personnel costs, that's great. However, you can charge to the personnel and non-personnel charges to this contract. It takes more evaluation on the project manager's part and on the contract administrator's part, because we have to see if you are charging things that are eligible for the program. With regard to the insurance, yes, absolutely, you have to submit. Lisa was, again, spot on in that every contract, even within the city, has different obligations. For example, if that individual who asked the question, or if any of the proposers on the line, if in fact they have not worked with youth or other type of at-risk age groups like seniors, then we would be looking for sexual abuse and molestation exclusion language. And so if their other contracts are not in that area, then that's additional coverage that you would have to have. And that's why what we do is we turn in your scope of work to our risk manager, and she looks to see, well, what exactly are the services that the city is buying. So then she looks to see, to determine, okay, this is appropriate coverage. And then the city attorney writes that language into the contract. And so they are on a case-by-case basis. And I think in the past, what I have seen our problems are, well, it kind of runs the gamut between really small nonprofits not having their workers' comp, other certificates of insurance that are going to expire within like a month that we start this process, and people not getting their appropriate insurance, them not having the address of the project or the administrative offices on the certificate, not having the cyber coverage or the omissions and exclusions coverage. That's a big one that a lot of nonprofits don't have. It typically tends to be a little bit expensive, but we require that because you are determining eligibility with these HUD grants. And so you are going to be privy to information that is personal information, and so personally identifying. And so you would have to have cyber or omissions and errors coverage. Not having your broker sign, there's a place on the insurance certificate. We actually have to have a human being sign that certificate, the broker sign it saying, yes, I'm acting as a representative of whatever that brokerage house is. And so it has to go back if Victoria Public has not signed as the human being broker, because you can type anybody's name on a form. We have to have a human being who is responsible for that actual policy and the coverage. I think, and then the business auto insurance in the past has been a problem. Auto coverage. I can pretty confidently say that most of the time, if it is requested to be waived, there are very specific instances. However, that it's waived, if you are traveling, and you might be giving somebody a ride, if you're in your car, let's say you have navigators and you're in your car most of the day during this business, they're going to require you to have business auto more than likely. You can certainly request not having that coverage. However, it takes a little bit of time, and there's typically some back and forth by the city attorney to ask a lot of questions as to why you want that waived. So, but sometimes it is a cost that some of the small nonprofits can't afford. And so we certainly entertain conversations about it. Just know that extends the time that it takes to, every exception that we have to do extends the time period that it takes for your contract to be developed. So keep that in mind. Did I cover, maybe Sylvia, what you wanted me to? Okay,
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. And there are additional questions in the chat. So Eric, if you could read the question so that we can get that captured as well.
Sure thing. Sorry, I had a sneeze. Let's see. Since the funding is for 2022, will there be opportunities for follow-on funding from DITO and our NOLA? And if you go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think that question was Marcy. Marcy, can you explain, I think, because there could be a typo in your question, and then explain what it is that you're asking, and you can come off camera or come off mute, excuse me.
Oh, sure. Essentially, I know this funding is just for the 2022. If it's a program that's either starting up or being enhanced, I guess I want to know, is there an opportunity to apply for some continuing funds from NOLA? Will there be another grant cycle? Or will we need to, if we were awarded, need to find ways to subsidize that or take over that portion that, you know what I mean?
Not really, but it's okay. I mean, the notice, I don't know what you mean by NOLA. So I think you're meaning NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability. Yeah, the NOFA funding availability, this is the program. This is what we're focusing, or this is what we're securing and procuring for this program year. So
is it just a one-time 1 year? If you were awarded, it's just for that year. And so you'll need to find the funding to follow on for it.
Yes. Now we do have the ability to write contracts up for 2 years. That is something that I believe is set within our city attorney's language or our ability to do so. That determination has not been made, but typically these contracts have gone annually from January to December.
Okay, great.
But there is an option to extend a program up to 2 years, or all programs. I've never seen it done singly. I've seen us do it for those that are either spending down appropriately and meeting the deliverable or their outcomes, so their performance is in check. So that is something that we have done. Last year was it was a good example. That was something that was totally unforeseen, right? And prior to that, in one of the previous administrations, I can't remember the year, but the actual HUD CDBG grant, the budget from HUD was actually zeroed out. And so we actually did not receive our award timely. And so we were forced at that point to write only 6-month contracts. And then when the budget was funded again, then we actually went back, and I can't remember if we amended or extended those contracts, but we added additional funding in. So there's just a variety of different things that can happen. But for what we're looking at right now, Tara and I don't recall if we've said that we're looking, because of these different collaborations or the encouragement of these collaborations and partnerships, if we talked about moving beyond the year. But Marcy, it's typically that, January to December.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with DDo's CDBG only having 1.3 million, you are only looking to fund about 8 or less projects.
An actual determination for the projects has not been determined. I mean, it's all going to depend on what we receive. It's going to be the proposals that we receive, and we'll be making that determination at that time.
Okay. Are the grant funds eligible to be spent in other parts of the city of Denver, or can they be spent only in the specified target areas?
We're looking at specified target areas, our nest neighborhoods.
Can
the 10 that are, go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow up on the question prior to that. So there's $1.3 million in funding, correct?
Average, yes.
Average for each?
No, that is our total budget.
Okay.
Yes.
All I did was divide
Sorry.
150,000 into 1.3 million, and it's a little over 8. That's why I asked.
Gotcha.
But that does not mean that there was nothing in the presentation that said we were averaging that amount.
Right.
So it's not an average.
We were going to be basing our decisions on the proposals that will be forthcoming. So put forth your best proposal in collaboration.
If the organization's headquarters is not in Denver, therefore a non-Denver address would be included on any documentation such as COI, would that disqualify the organization from applying?
Miss Lindsay, there you go.
We have done business with people that are headquartered not in Denver. However, you have to be registered as a foreign entity in Colorado, and we need to know what's the partner agency that you're working for in Colorado. Now, with regard, if you're in Colorado and not in Denver, that proposes a problem, because if you're not in Denver, we need to know, then how are you serving Denver County residents? This money has been given to us by HUD, and every county gets HUD money. And so we are looking to spend our money that Denver County gets on Denver County residents. And so if you have a COI, we have to, that doesn't include a Denver address, we have to look to see, well, how are you operating and how is your program accessible? I mean, maybe you have a mobile program. I don't know. Those are the things that we have to look at. But no, it does not disqualify you.
Thank you. For the priority areas we are serving, can it be mapped by zip code, or is it required to be mapped by census tract?
The priority for the nest neighborhoods. Oops, where am I even?
Did you want me to repeat that, or you can read it? It's Antoinette's question.
For the priority, am I on mute? Sorry.
No, you're good.
Nope, I'm not. Let me get back to the chat.
For the priority areas we are serving, can it be mapped by zip code, or is it required to be mapped by census tract?
How we typically map by census tract, I believe. Well, I mean, it depends, I guess, on how you're, what are you looking to do what is your question, Antoinette, on this one? Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah.
So in our nest neighborhoods.
Right. So the area that we're focusing in is East Colfax.
East Colfax, right.
And so sometimes that would be a person, like, because they're so, obviously the census tract are so close together, and sometimes there'll be like a business or something right across the road and it'll be the same zip code, but it won't be the census tract, if that makes sense.
Rachel, can you help guide on that one?
Sure. And I'm assuming.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I guess I'm assuming we're talking about an activity that would have an outcome of lower moderate area. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So in that case, when Sylvia says that we're basing it off of census tract, that's correct, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every single individual or business served is in that particular census tract. The census tracts that we report to HUD for these LMA activities are basically the general service area that the service covers. But if, you know, if a business or an individual from a different one happens to come and retain those services, then that's okay. We're just looking for where the services are concentrated.
Okay, thank you, Rachel.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. If we received, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Fine. If we received a DIDO workforce development grant in the most recent cycle, are we eligible to apply for this opportunity?
Yes, I think that was, did we answer that question earlier, Morgan? Or was that someone else that talked about?
I just wanted to clarify that that doesn't exclude us from this opportunity.
No, it doesn't exclude you, no.
Okay, are insurance requirements necessary for the application, or do they need to be in place for the contract period? We're in the process of updating our insurance coverage and curious if I need to put more focus here to ensure it's all in place before the application.
There goes Victoria.
Sorry, I'm looking for the question. I was stuck on the
Rob Smith's, yeah, Rob Smith's question.
It's the second to the last question.
Yeah, you are going to have to upload your insurance as a viable business. You should have insurance coverage. Now, you may not have all of the coverages because it hasn't been negotiated yet. But we're looking for you as a business. At least you should have workers' comp and general liability. If the scope of work that's negotiated requires you to have other coverages, then you would have to obtain those other coverages. But we're looking for the minimum coverage that a business should have, which is general liability and workers' comp. Does that answer the question? I'm sorry, I'm toggling between the note screen and the visual screen.
This is Rob. Yeah, we've got all the insurance requirements. It's just really the updating our cyber insurance. And curious if I should put some emphasis on that to get the coverage in place before the application, or if you guys would just want to.
Not necessarily, Rob. I mean, if you're not really sure how much coverage you would need in that area, that particular area you could wait. Cool. We're okay with that as long as we can see the minimum that you have, the minimum coverages, those two coverages that I mentioned are there, then we'll negotiate the rest of the coverages for you to, but just be prepared to update your insurance certificate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, there's one more question. For other sources of funds, do those funds need to be funds that have already been awarded in hand, or sorry, that's just threw me off. That have already been awarded in hand, or can they be funds that you are planning to be available?
That question is from Steve Jackson. Steve, keep in mind with this community development block grant, and I'm not sure if you have other contracts with us, I mean, outside of the DISBO world, but this is, and for everyone on this call, this is a reimbursable contract. So basically we are looking for your organizations to put forth the services, and then you will turn around and then seek reimbursement for those expenses. So you know, there is and I'm not sure if it's on, I'm sure it is on the budget sheet, and I'm sure it's a question that's asked in the application. I can't draw it out right now, but we do ask for leveraged funds, I believe, are there. And so when we're looking at that application, Steve, I mean, we're looking to see what other sources of funding, whether they be city, non-city, and I think it says other federal funding on that. So we're assuming that that is what you have in hand. You know, you guys got to be able to operate this program.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have seen in some past applications, I have seen, because there used to be, you know, something that said like the funding chart or something like that, and would show what folks had over the year, their history, as well as people have stated in their application funds that were sort of pending. But that.
Right. I'm really going to that whole leveraging question, right? So, you know, everybody loves to leverage, right? So everybody leverages based upon each other's leverage. So, you know, so everybody wants to be leveraged, but, you know, somebody has to jump in, and you have to kind of, you know, in order to get that leverage, you know, just what comes first, right? I mean,
well, CDBG
I could apply
requires
for this, and then some other folks would say, well, yeah, if you get that, then we're willing to come in with this amount of money to cover this. But so,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, as I was going to say, add on to what Victoria was just saying, because CDBG requires that leverage. So, you know, we don't, I don't want to be too harsh when I say it, but I mean, we're not looking to see anything that's not real. If that, it needs to be there.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
So it needs to be secured.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. And
Sylvia, can I just add to someone ask a question about workforce? If they had a workforce contract or other program, I just want to make sure that people that have other sources within the agency and they have other contracts. I want us to be really clear that this is not we're checking for a duplication of effort. If you have 20 kids that you're serving, let's say, for example, on a workforce contract, I'm not looking to see those same 20 kids in the HUD contract. We talk to each other, we compare, we look to see, because the HUD requirements are much different than Department of Labor, than WIOA, and some other state fundings. And so we're looking for this particular funding to take care of some specific need for a specific group of people. We're not looking for you to say, I have these 20 kids and I have this $200,000 contract, and you're reporting the same 20 kids on this for $200,000 again. That's a duplication of effort, and that would not be allowable. So, but you can have other contracts. Let's say your workforce contract was for 20 kids, but you really want to serve 40, but that workforce contract only allowed for you to be able to fund 20 kids. So yeah, we'll fund the other 20 if that's what's negotiated for the money. You've got to keep different records, and they have to be separate and apart from that funding. I hope that clarified that question.
Yeah, on that same line though, say you did have that situation, would you even put that other funding in there as another source? Because like you said, you have to separate it. So that other source really is not helping you fund that other 20, you know, the new 10. So, you know, and then you do get into the question of like you said, duplicating funds.
Well, we don't know if it is a duplication if you don't disclose, you see. And that's why we have the form that you all have to upload that identifies your funding pockets. because that's what our internal auditor is going to be looking at. Okay, well, who are the kids being paid out of this pot and who are the kids being paid out of the other pot? I mean, I shouldn't say we don't know, because we certainly do our due diligence with our other divisions to find out who has what funding. But if you don't declare it, that won't look good for you.
Okay.
Whether they're being utilized for this program or not. What we do know is that you still have, it could be some of your staff that are being utilized for both programs. Rent could be utilized for both programs, materials, etc. So it's very rare that one pot of funds will support an entire program. That's in my experience, that has been unusual. Either there's private funds or another federal program that's supporting another aspect of a project or a program. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, I appreciate that, because when you're looking at that workforce component, that is a lot that what goes on. So just wanted to be clear as to what we should put down from those other sources. So you're saying other sources that we do already have contracts with to provide those services, we already have funding with, but we need to put those in no matter what, and then show how we're extending our services with this new contract.
So what would happen would be, on your form, let's say you're just saying City and County of Denver funding, and using the example I just gave, $200,000. Well, I don't specifically know whether it is all coming from workforce. I mean, I'll find out, as we start negotiating the contract. But I don't know if all of that $200,000, it could be, let's say $100,000 from workforce and $100,000 from another agency. Let's say Department of Human Services and TANF. It's still city fund. It's still $200,000 of city funding, but there may be different participants that are recipients of that fund. But you're still just declaring that pot of city funding. And so I'm not gonna drill down when I'm doing a technical review on, let me drill down and find out where all this money comes from. Okay, they've declared this. Okay, good. That's good to know. And and looking at your private funds, your other federal funds, your city funds, because we know that there tends to be a little bit of crossover. So when I say duplication of services, I mean the services of those particular people. You may have a group of people that are being paid out of HUD and a group of people that are being paid out of the Department of Labor and your workforce money, or the state of Colorado. So that's not, it might be the same type of a program, but we're not duplicating those participants, paying for them twice.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So in that example, just real quick, and I'll be quiet. In that example, would then it would be more favorable for a fee of service type of a model versus a staff model because of that, because of that duplication? And how do you guys
just so you
look
know,
at that?
I prefer fee for service because I think it's pretty cut and dry. However, that's up to you. We give you a choice. And so
Right.
I can't direct you on that, but we
Right.
give you a choice on that. So whatever works best for your agency.
Okay. And I was just trying to say, when in your evaluation process, is that a factor in terms of just, relative to, like you said, the ability to delineate, and also the ability to see a direct fee for service that's targeted at a particular individual. Do you guys look at that more favorable or less, or?
No, I wouldn't say we do. I wouldn't say we do, because what that comes down to is in compliance. Because I would have to look, like if you have 2 or 3 different fundings, I'd have to look to see, well, who are you charging in this funding? Who are you charging in that one? And who are you charging in the other? And so that would be in the compliance portion of your contract. and we wouldn't be digging that deeply in the technical review, but it doesn't influence us one way or another.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, Sylvia. You know how I get.
No, that's what it's here for. It's built on 2 hours. And let's see, going back to the chat, Eric.
Yeah, looks like there's a couple more. Will funding support existing programs, or does the program have to be something new? No, you're good.
Yeah, we've had existing programs and we have those that are new.
So it could be either or then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is the funding portal BidNet?
No, it's Engine.
Correct.
We had, for those of you who are new to this, we actually are moving over or have moved over to this new, the new platform. We have been accepting applications in the past in the WiseHive system. So this is, I don't know if we call it a spin-off or a subsidiary or what they are. Oh,
it's a revised platform, a new platform that the WiseHive people created because WiseHive no longer exists.
Right.
And so it has been replaced by Zengin. People who have applied before, you will find some familiarities. They've been working for a few years trying to kind of make it Zengin a little bit more user friendly without so many workarounds that we have kind of complained over the years. And so hopefully you'll find this an easier platform to navigate.
Yeah, but not BidNet.
Correct.
Questions for now.
That's it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to, if there aren't any more questions, we do again appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and speak with you today and discuss the overview really of the 2022 NOFA. Again, we just want to remind individuals that all this information will be placed out on our funding website, including these questions and the answers that were you received and heard today. The additional technical assistance sessions will follow. There will be one on October 8th, and then the second and final one will be October 25th. So we do encourage you. One of the things that I think we all talked about as a team is that ensuring that, because sometimes you don't get into it until you're in the nitty-gritty of applying, and maybe there is a question that you have or reminded of. So we don't encourage you necessarily to submit your application right away, right? Because you could benefit from a question that's going to come up in the next technical assistance session. Obviously, that is up to you, but we will be adding the 2 Q&As. We will not be revisiting this entire program again as far as presentation. We are just going to be there to answer technical questions that you may have. Again, we do not and cannot respond specifically about your program creation. So just please do keep that in mind. The website is there, this funding page, even the PowerPoint will be made available, as well as the recording for you all to listen to. Let me just check and make sure my last slide here. Yeah, someone just asked about the presentation to the slide deck. We'll be making sure that we can provide that to you as well. Let me see here. Let me go to my last slide. Sorry about that. Let me just check. I think that is it. I want to take this opportunity again to thank you. I really want to take an opportunity as well to thank the staff. Again, an unprecedented season and time that we were in, and so we're just thankful and appreciative, and that we're able to put forth a NOFA for the 2022 year. We've had individuals from the DITO team broadly join in helping us get this, not only the NOFA, but the presentation and all the outward-facing public materials out. You'll probably continue to see the information coming out. Just promote that as much as you can. because we are asking for those collaborative partnerships. And so it would help for you to be, sending this information far and wide as well for folks that you know. But I'd like to take the opportunity today, before we close, to thank Rachel King, who's the Director of our Administration and Federal Compliance, Kat Jarvis, who was an assist to us. She's no longer with us. It was her last day was Friday. She now becomes the Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office of Children's Affairs. But I want to thank her for her input. Meredith Sagara today, who helped drive the PowerPoint, and Eric Valdez, who's on our support team as well. Jonathan Steiner and Kelsey Murphy, who have been the gurus for the ZenGen platform. They've unveiled this new ZenGen platform for some variety of different grant opportunities that we've had over these last several months. So we really want to thank them for their direction and their expertise. Dan Fector, who is our DITO Senior Internal Auditor, who we rely on and presented and was kind enough to develop the new budget documents. For those of you who may be returning, the old budget cost allocation plan and narrative are no longer. So we're hoping that it's much easier for you and us as staff to follow. So we want to thank Dan for that. And then Lisa Valdez, who's a contract administrator in DITO on the business development side, or excuse me, the workforce development side of our shop. And she stepped in today for Victoria, who was not able to attend early on in our presentation. So again, please keep in mind the PowerPoint presentation, the links that you have, the resources Susan Lee put in the chat, the HUD guide, and I think there's a reference to it in the materials. It gives you a really good overview also of just sort of HUD and some of the do's and don'ts, and maybe can bring some semblance of understanding around this funding as well. So again, we want to thank you for this opportunity. We wish you luck, and we'll see who'll be our partners in 2022. So thanks, and see you at the technical assistance presentations on the 8th and 25th if you so choose to be there. So thank you very much. Take care.